remember so much about this story because I was so young when it happened. The parts I don't remember is what my mom tells me. As a little girl, my mom would take me to the mall every year and meet Santa. My very first time sitting on Santa's lap, I was only 2, and like most kids at that age, I was terrified. But as I got older, I became more and more comfortable asking who I thought was Santa for gifts. My mom thinks part of the reason I became so comfortable was because it was the same Santa every year, and he had a real beard. I'm not sure I even noticed it was always the same Santa, but based on the pictures, I would guess that he looks like a legit, wholesome-looking guy. I think kids have the ability to suss out the ones that look like imposters, because that's exactly what I did when I was 7. Just like every year, a week or so before Christmas, my mom and I were off to the mall. I don't know if it was the time of day or what, but the line to meet Santa was much smaller than I had remembered. There was only like 5 families in front of us. Usually the line went up and around the corner. While we were waiting, I asked my mom, "What happened to Santa?" This Santa was not fat or jolly looking. He looked thin, didn't even attempt to put something under his suit to fake being fat. And his beard was so bad, I'm sure all the kids could tell it was fake. I was really disappointed when I saw this. At this point in my life, I've only seen one Santa. As the line cleared and it was my turn, my disappointment turned to fear. I can't really explain why I felt this way, but everything in my body was telling me to stay away from this guy. My mom is nudging me in his direction, telling me that it's my turn. I shake my head no. She encourages me one more time as we always get our annual Santa photo. I take one more look over at Santa as he's waving me over, and for some reason I start crying uncontrollably and my body starts shaking. My mom could tell something was wrong with me because this is not usual behavior on my part. She pulls me away and we go for a walk. After I calm down, she asks me what happened. I couldn't really give her a good answer because I wasn't even sure. I explained to her, all I know is that when it was my turn, I had this overwhelming sense of fear, that Santa gave me such a bad feeling I couldn't contain my emotions. My mom seemed to listen, never made me feel like my behavior was strange, but it was definitely out of character for me. I never acted this way before, but I've never felt that way before. We went home without a picture with Santa. We never brought up what happened again, until next summer. I came inside the house after playing with my friends, and my mom and her friend looked like they were having a serious conversation. I asked if everything was okay. My mom tells me that she read in the newspaper that the man that was Santa last Christmas was a bad guy in real life and was arrested. The news made me feel scared. I asked what he did to be arrested. She just tells me that he was a criminal. A good answer to tell a 7-year-old. Because 10 years later, when I was a senior in high school, I brought up that Santa story, and she tells me the rest of it. The guy that played Santa was a foster parent for 4 children and was arrested for molesting them. My mom says to me, "I remember you not having a good explanation for not wanting to sit on his lap, but I think there was something deep down in you that instinctually alerted you to danger, and you were right." I was shook when I finally heard the whole story. I'm 32 now, and I still think of that story from time to time, especially when I take my 6 and 4-year-old daughters to see Santa. I'm 38 years old and live alone. No wife, no kids, not much of a family left to celebrate Christmas with, but I still enjoy Christmas, at least the idea of it. Where I live, it doesn't snow a lot, maybe once a year at most, but there was snow expected on Christmas in the evening. Forecasts have predicted snow lots of times before, and are usually wrong, maybe a small dusting at best. But this time, they were right. Around 6 p.m. Christmas night, the snow arrived. I mean a lot. At least for me it was. 6 to 8 inches eventually fell that night. Because it was so rare, I really enjoyed it. I don't go out and build snowmans or anything, but it's a nice change. Later that night, I became extremely hungry. My fridge is usually empty. I was used to eating out a lot, and there were a few places open on Christmas. So despite the snow, I head out on the road. My truck has all-wheel drive, so I wasn't worried. As I start driving, the snow was really coming down at that point. I was in the 35-mile-an-hour zone, but cruised at 20 just to be safe. There weren't many cars on the road. Most people here are scared to drive in the snow. As I was driving, I noticed a man on foot trying to hail me down. Usually I wouldn't stop for something like this, but because it was snowing and so cold, I figured I stopped to see what's going on. A man approaches my passenger window, and I roll it down. He looked extremely cold, like he had been out there for hours. He was wearing 2 jackets and gloves. I asked, "What's going on?" He tells me that his car got stuck and needed a ride back to his place where he had tire chains to put on his car so he could get out. He said he only lives a mile away, but would need a ride back to his car. I hesitated for a moment because I really don't like having strangers in my car, but it was so cold outside. I agreed. When he got in, for some reason, he chose to sit in the back seat. I thought it was odd, but didn't say anything. As we were driving, I didn't notice a car that was stuck. I asked where his car was. He said, "Oh, it's back there," and pointed vaguely in some direction. I couldn't tell because he was in the back. He directs me what turns to take to his house. It was not a great neighborhood. It looked like a rundown area. He tells me it's the purple house up ahead. I pull up next to it on the street. It looked worse than the other homes. One of the windows was boarded up. The guy tells me, "Okay, I'm just going in to get my chains and I'll be right out. Don't go anywhere." This whole situation didn't sit right with me. I didn't want to be here. I told myself, I'll give him 3 minutes, and if he isn't back after that, I'm leaving. After 2 minutes, I see the front door open. I was disappointed because I wanted him to not come back. But it's not just the guy that I picked up. There was another guy behind him. This was unexpected company. I see the guy behind him with one of his hands in the front pouch of his sweatshirt holding something that formed the imprint of what seemed to be a gun. Perfect excuse to get the hell out of here, I thought. Truck still running, I put it in drive and went as fast as I could on the snow. As I'm driving away, I hear 2 loud pops behind me. I was being shot at. On Christmas. Luckily, neither me or my truck was hit. I skipped the burger and drove straight to the police station, told them what happened and where the house was. Some of the officers headed to the location. I stayed back and was asked to give a description, and I honestly couldn't give a good one. I know I saw his face, but once he sat in the back seat, I never got a good look. The guy with the gun had a hood over his head. When the cops investigated the purple house, they discovered that it was abandoned. They said there were multiple homes on that road that were vacant. I became even more enraged as time passed, and nobody was ever arrested. So frustrating to know that those guys are out free, roaming around, able to do this to another person, and their next victim might not be as lucky as me. At the time this all happened, I had recently turned 21 and in my senior year of college, and I was excited to go back home during Christmas break to see my friends and family. I was also excited for the fact that I was finally 21. I was the last of my friends to do so. Most of my friends still live back home, and I looked forward to hanging out with them while being able to have a drink with them out in public. Christmas fell on a Monday that year, and we planned to do most of our bar hopping the weekend before. Admittedly, there wasn't much bar hopping to do. I grew up in a small town, and there wasn't many bars around, especially for kids that just became drinking age. Except for one. My friends tell me about this bar where all the kids from high school would go to. They said it would be like a high school reunion for me. And that Saturday night, that's exactly what it was. I ran into so many people that I haven't seen in years, or only saw once or twice since high school. Seeing all the familiar faces and hanging out with my 2 best friends, David and Eric, I was having the time of my life. I later went up to the bar to order another round for the fellas. And as I was waiting for the drinks, a girl comes right up next to me. I couldn't believe it. It was Tiffany. I hadn't talked to her much back in high school, but she was gorgeous. All the guys thought so. Long hair, green eyes, and was fit. When she sat next to me, she immediately started talking like we were old friends. Like I said, I didn't say much to her back then. Maybe I was a little shy or whatever. But now she was being really flirty with me, so I didn't mind. She would even touch my shoulder and laugh when I would say something funny. We talked for like 5 minutes. I then said I need to give my friends their drink. She asked who I was with, and when I said David and Eric, in a disappointing way she said, "Oh, them? Well, give them their drinks and come right back," she says. When I dropped off the drinks, I was excited to tell David and Eric about how much I was hitting it off with Tiffany. They looked at each other with concern. David says, "Dude, be careful. I'm pretty sure she's dating this older guy that's been in and out of jail for drug charges." Eric says, "Yeah, I think she does that stuff too." This was my 2 best friends giving me a warning to stay away from her. But I was 21 and 5 beers in, and she was hot, so I went back to the bar to talk to her some more. She continued to be extra flirty with me. I started to flirt back. In about 20 minutes of this, we start making out right there at the bar. Alcohol and a hot girl in the mix is hard to resist even when your friends are looking out for you. Tiffany then says to me, "Let's take this somewhere else." I'm trying to contain my excitement because I know what that means. She says, "Why don't you come with me? I only live 2 miles away." I followed her to her car and got in, without even telling David and Eric. We were still making out as we pulled up to the apartment on the first floor. I know I was intoxicated, but as we pulled up, her headlights were shining on a window, and I saw someone peeking out of the curtains and then quickly duck behind them. I thought that must have been someone else's apartment and not hers. But when we got out of the car and I followed her, she went to open the door to the same apartment I saw someone in. I then asked her, "Do you live alone?" She replies, "Yes." I know for a fact that she's lying, because I know what I saw, and I can see it in her eyes. I'm standing there trying to think of something to say. I couldn't think of anything clever, and I truly believed I was being set up for a trap of some sort, a robbery or whatever it was. I had to do something. No thought out, intelligent excuse to give to Tiffany at all. I just started running as fast as I could back to the bar. I left her behind without saying a word. Halfway running back towards the bar, I was exhausted, but I also felt weird. I didn't just feel drunk. There was a sense of fogginess. I needed to sit down. I sat down and hid in a nearby bush, thinking Tiffany and whoever might still be after me. And I called Eric and told him to come get me in approximately where I was. By the time David and Eric show up, my odd symptoms were even worse. They had to help me into the car as I mumbled to them what happened. The next morning, I felt like I was hit by a train and wasn't able to remember a whole lot or what happened. Only after listening to what David and Eric told me, and a few days go by, I was able to fully tell this story. I can't be 100% sure. I can't prove anything. But not only was I going to be ambushed if I went into that apartment, I think Tiffany might have drugged me. When I went to the bar to get a round of drinks, I left my drink at the bar with Tiffany when giving David and Eric their drinks, and that gave her the opportunity to slip something in mine. 5 or 6 drinks might be a lot to some people, but my hangover and how quickly I seemed to black out seemed more like a 12-drink night. David and Eric laughed and made jokes at the whole situation. They didn't take this too seriously. They thought I was being paranoid. They thought I was dumb for running away from a pretty girl. I don't think I'll ever know for sure what would have happened, but better safe than sorry.